Very good. Okay, so what does Rambam tell us? That the Navi is not saying that the word of Hashem will appear to the young and old and the slaves and the girls and the youth. Rather, they will all be dreamers and visionaries, meaning people who just have visions, as in people of sort of, powerful imagination, that, something like that. Psychics.
Something that's not a nevuah.
Something that's not a nevuah, some sort of psychic experience. And the Rambam says, okay, so if it's not a nevuah, so why does it say v'nebu? Ki kol mi shemedeh nistaris. Anyone who can tell you hidden things. Bein b'derech shel nichush v'intuitzia, whether it's through nichush, some sort of divination. These are very important words here, and there's different ways to translate it, and very important to get the translation right here, what exactly I'm referring to. But he says, whether it's through, in my translation, nichush or intuition, or a person could have true dreams. Doesn't mean he's technically a navi, but nikor gamhu navi. It's called a navi. So the Rambam's big rule, very important rule, that there are words that have more than one meaning. And the word navi, although technically the way we're concerned with using it in these prakim is someone who has a message from Hashem, an eluf tishmon, etc. And the Rambam describes how that works. But anyone who has something can tell you hidden things, whether it's through intuition or some sort of divination or sort of dreams. It's called a navi. So therefore, these people are walking around having dreams, these cool dreams. I had a dream that such and such is going to happen, and it came true. That's happened to me. Okay, I've had true dreams. Okay, so I guess on the pasuk of Yoel was in Skyim. I'm not saying when navi, some weird thing happens. You have true dreams. No one knows how it works. Okay, whatever it is. But the pasuk, so Yoel is saying the day is going to come where this is going to happen, and it's going to be widespread. And I use the word v'nibu, says the Rambam, it's called a navi. V'lachei neviah habal, neviah hasher niku neviim. You could be a navi for Baal, a navi for Asherah. The word of God is not coming to you, the Malach is not coming to you. But yet you're called a navi because you are somehow in touch with some hidden stuff, meaning hidden from other people. You have intuition or some other means of somehow tapping into things. The Rambam talks about elsewhere how that works. But it works, and that's called a navi. And says, so he's not a navi in the sense that we talk about it elsewhere. The word navi is used in general for this kind of thing. Okay. So the questions are as follows. And this is the Abarbanel's question. We'll start with that. He says, what type of great promise is this in Yoel? That the day is going to come where everyone's going to have dreams and visions. If those dreams and visions don't mean that they're going to be prophets of Hashem, so what's so special about that? That they're going to be dreamers.
So the Rambam seems to stress that emes is a component of these visions nonetheless.
Where?
Right here.
Why? Because it's chaloim emes. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying they're not, even though he then goes and brings in the Nevi'ah Habal, he's not saying that they are going to have visions that have no truth content.
Right.
Okay, so there's some truth content.
Some veracity to the vision.
Right, okay. So he says like this. Okay, here's the way that Abarbanel asks, it's very sharp. Is the promise of the Navi, the prediction of the Navi, Shebizman kibbutz golia is Yisrael koisim kesamim, menachesh u'ma'oinu u'mechashiv, or say the future because of some sort of divination. Hakesem hatayra asra isay. And Elamai says because of some intuition that you have even Bizman Hagolas. But I'm sort of like a monoshach. It's like if it's just that they have a very strong intuition, okay, that happens during Golos also. And if Elamai is something magical, well, magic is also. So those are three options that Babinel. Either you have good intuition, okay, that happens even today, or it's magic, which is also, or you're a navi. So what's this? That's a big set of question, which is a pretty good, strong way to ask the question. So I say, and he asks another question. Why is this called Eshbeches Ruchi? It's called the Ruach of God. Why is this called the Ruach of God? Says the Abarbanel. This expression should be said about the Ruach of Nevuah that was lost during Golos. So the Abarbanel. So the Rambam seems to take this pasuk and basically empty it of any significance and say, okay, it's not saying anything about Nevuah. It's saying that there's going to be this phenomenon, weird phenomenon, where everyone's going to have this ability to see things. Have visions, miraculously or otherwise, not clear in the Rambam. But what's the significance of that? And the truth is, as we mentioned, I think Kapach has this kasha, the Rambam twice brings this pasuk to tell us that nevuah is going to eventually return. One place in the end of the Hakadama to the Minyan HaMitzvahs. So he's marich over there about the fact that, okay, there's a list of mitzvahs, but some of them depend on the king, some of them depend on Beis HaMikdash, some of them depend on the navi, and of course we don't have a king, we don't have a navi, we don't have Beis HaMikdash. So I'm not going to say by each mitzvah that it's Ein Noeg B'Zman Hazeh. That's what I'm going to do. Nevuah and kingship has been lost from us until we leave the sins that we're holding on to. As he promised. And he will bring back prophecy and kingship. So this is the pasuk that predicts the return of nevuah, which is something the Rambam says in the Geras Taman also, where he has his he talks about his tradition about when nevuah is going to return. That even though we can't predict when Mashiach is going to come, but he knows when nevuah is going to return, and that's going to be in the year 1972 to creation, according to this Girsha. Gives the question of the Girsha here, which is what year? 1972. That would bring us to 1212. Okay, the Rambam had that nevuah returning in the year 1212. He was nifter in 1206, something like that. Okay, and then he says like this. So, ve'ein safek sheshivas hanevuah liyisrael me'akadomis haMashiach. There's no doubt that the return of prophecy is something that precedes Mashiach, or indicates the coming of Mashiach. Ka'amroi v'nibu b'neichem v'neseichem. This pasuk in Yoel, that part of the Geula is the return of nevuah. I'm not sure where he sees Mashiach over there, but that's what he says. Therefore, knowing when nevuah is going to return is like having some prediction of when Mashiach is coming, because undoubtedly the return of nevuah is part of the process of Mashiach. As the pasuk says, that part of the Geula lost lavai, nevuah is going to return. So clearly, this pasuk in the Rambam does mean the return of nevuah. Now, okay, maybe you say the Rambam was chayzer, chveis, whatever, but I'll prove to you, even in the Meirah, that this pasuk must be referring to nevuah, because in the Chelik Aleph Perek Mem, which talks about the word ruach. So we have this pasuk. The pasuk says v'nibu b'neichem v'neseichem. So the Ram talks about that part of the pasuk. He says, okay, you know what? They're going to have dreams and visions, but there's no nevuah. But what does eshbeches ruchi mean? Which that's in the Barbanel asked the question, but he could have asked Shafar. The Barbanel just asks, like, oh, ruchi, the ruach of ruchi means the ruach of Hashem. Why is it called the ruach of Hashem if people could have dreams and visions, stam visions and dreams? But the truth is, the Rambam himself talks about what the word ruach means. This is in Chelik Aleph Perek Mem. I'm going to read from paragraph 5, but the Rambam goes through the various definitions of the word ruach, and he says ruach means the element air. It means, that's one meaning. Second meaning, the wind that blows. Third meaning, the living force of any living thing. Fifth meaning, that which remains after death, the immortal soul. Did I say fifth, or that was fourth? Four. Okay. So the element air, the wind that blows, 2. 3, living spirit. 4, the immortal soul. 5, Hashefa hasichli ha'eloki, hashefeya al haneviyim, the divine shefa of intellect that overflows onto the neviim, kadeshi yisnabu boy. But we're going to talk about nevuah. This is the beginning of Perek Lamed Beis. Rambam tells us, really more in Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Vav. The Rambam says the essence of nevuah is a shefa sichli that interacts with the navi's koyach hamadameh. And he quotes the few psukim, okay, that's the fifth meaning. And also means will. Okay, also means will. That's the sixth meaning. And now the last paragraph in this parak, Chelik Aleph Parak. Kol ruach hamiyucheses la Hashem. Anytime we talk about the ruach of Hashem, he imkein lefi hamashmos hachamishis. It's the fifth meaning. The ruach of Hashem means the shefa sichli aloki, which comes from Hashem to the Nevi'im. Sometimes it means will. Okay, so what does it mean in this pasuk of Eshbeches Ruchi al Kabasa v'Nibu? It certainly doesn't mean will. Hashem doesn't spill his will. Eshbeches Ruchi means clearly the fifth meaning, which Rambam explicitly says it's the Shefa Sichli Eloki. Now, in our paragraph, I'm saying that v'nibu b'neichem v'neseichem is not nevuah that interacts with the seichel and has an effect on the koach madama. It's merely visions, intuition, and dreams. So then why is that called ruchi, which, again, the Rambam says ruchi means shefa sechli alaki that goes on the nevi'im.
Why can't it be the sixth word? Why can't it be ratzon?
Because I don't think Hashem spills his ratzon. Eshbech, I think, is a word you use for the shefa, which is like mayim. The shefa, the Rambam Beis Yud Beis talks about the shefa. The mashal for the shefa is water. So you could pour it. It pours, it spreads.
Could it be an intermediate stage? Meaning, in normal scenario 5, it's they've prepared themselves, they're intellectually ready, they have an imagination, and they get the koach,
Right.
the shefa comes over.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't completely built up, right? Like the kids, then fine, you get simply, but it doesn't translate to nevuah with a capital N. It's
Right.
visions.
So it's like echem mishishim b'nevuah, basically. You're saying, right? You're saying like just like a chalaim is echem mishishim b'nevuah. Okay, so when a chalaim works, when it's true, maybe there is an element of seichel interacting with the
It's
divin.
not
Right.
but it's not
Right.
nevuah.
It's like it's in the translation of it. It's the same information coming in,
Right.
but
It's
it's not processed properly.
Well, also it's less information coming in because you don't have so much seichel because you're a kid. But whatever seichel you do have is interacting with
Does
the
it
vision.
have to be meaning is Levite? You can't decipher it. It doesn't matter how much information is coming in. It's the same. You're going to get the same much out of it. If you only have the capacity to understand 5% or whatever, no matter how much is spilled, you only get that.
Okay, fine. Oh, see, I see what you're saying. Okay, so you're saying that, but the problem is like this: the spilling. Okay, so you're saying it's spilled, but young people only have part. Basically, you're saying the same thing. The young people only have a part of it, but they're still interacting with that seichel. They're interacting with the shefa.
And it's the same spill that happened both for young and old. It's
Right. No, the reason why that's a little problematic is because in what sense is there a shefa of seichel for someone who can't know it? You're looking at it like the shefa of seichel is a thing that you tune into to a certain degree. I'm not sure that's correct. Meaning a person doesn't have a seichel, so
non-existent.
yeah, there's no shefa seichel for him. But ultimately, it boils down to the same thing. Okay, fine. Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I guess we have to understand better. We're both asking essentially the same thing. We have to understand better the nature of these true dreams and intuition, right? How do they work? Do they actually use the seichel or not?
It gets you in the problem.
What?
It gets you in the problem.
If they in fact interact with the seichel,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Right, and it's the same pasuk that's used for both the children and for the returning of nevuah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's what we're trying to solve. Right. So you say. So the answer is no. But here's the thing. Okay, but you're not answering that question though. You're not answering the question of how does it indicate the return of nevuah? If ultimately the pasuk is just saying if eshbeches ruchi means that people will have true dreams, and that itself is called eshbeches ruchi because chalem echem mishishim nevuah. Let's say, sort of like so the way Tavi was saying, then it in no way indicates the return of nevuah. Right. There's two kashas over here. How does the pasuk indicate the return of nevuah? Well, let's say the Barbanel's kasha. Who cares? Why is this so interesting? Why is the Navi so excited about this? Everyone's going to be having dreams. Okay, so a bunch of psychos, like literally. I mean, whatever, they're hallucinating. Okay, it's a pretty cool thing because hallucinations sometimes have truth to them. Right, very cool, very nice. But we don't listen to them. And on the contrary, you're not allowed to listen to them. Maybe yeah, maybe no. Depends exactly what happened. Right, that's the whole thing. Barbanel's kasha. Secondly, the Rambam quotes this pasuk to talk about the return of nevuah. And thirdly, what does ruchi mean? So maybe you can answer ruchi your way, ulai. Kitzer, let's leave this aside for now, and let's read on, and we'll see that there's similar problems in the next passage in this parak, which is about what happened at Mount Sinai. Okay, so now we're back to Chelik Beis, Perek Lam Beis, paragraph number 8. Asher Mount Sinai. What about Mount Sinai? So what does it mean Asher Mount Sinai? Same problem. I just told you that kids can't be prophets, it's impossible. So what's going on by Mount Sinai? Af al pi shekulam hayu edim le'esh hagedoylo. Even though everyone witnessed the great fire, v'shamu es hakoilis haneroim v'hamavhilim, and everyone heard the great frightening sounds, al derech hanes. So here the Rambam tells us something interesting. Well, let's just read a little more. Harei lahigil dargs and nevuah mishuroy l'mekach. Even though everyone saw the Eish HaGedolah and the koilis, al derech hanes, but not everyone became a navi. So what does he mean? We have a very important question over here. When he says that they saw the Eish and heard the Koilas al derech hanes. Does he mean that it was a miraculous fire and a miraculous sound? That once a miracle created this fire and created this sound, all it took to hear it or see it was the usual natural method of hearing and seeing everything? Or was the actual seeing and hearing the miracle? Okay? Was there miraculous fire? Like, okay, let's say there will be a miracle. Right now there will be a fire in this room, or a coil shofar, or a coil of thunder. Okay, so there's a coil. But it's a coil, it has sound waves, it has photons, as fires do, and everyone can see it. Is that what it means? Or does he mean that there was a miracle that people saw something? Meaning to say, maybe other people didn't see it. Maybe there wasn't really anything there to see. There was a miracle that people saw something that wasn't there. You have two readings? Any thoughts?
These are my questions too.
Okay. So first of all, the words themselves indicate, if you read it properly, and the Arabic supports this, all of them were witness to the fire and heard the koilas al derech hanes. That's going back on the fact that they saw and heard it. Not that there happened to be fire. Oh, how'd the fire get there? There was a nes. No, he's saying they all saw and heard al derech hanes. The seeing and the hearing was the miracle. But furthermore, it's supported by the fact that he continues and says, but nonetheless, they weren't all Nevi'im. What's the contrast over here? Be'eshlam, if the Rambam is saying like this, there was a miraculous kind of seeing and a miraculous kind of hearing. Even though everyone had this miracle that their auditory senses and their visual senses became attuned to something that most people that normally you couldn't see, nonetheless, they weren't Nevi'im. That makes sense to say. But what does not make sense to say that even though a fire appeared in my living room, out of the blue, a miracle, and I saw it, nonetheless I was a navi. Why should you think I'm a navi just because I was able to see a fire that appeared miraculously in my room? Clearly, Rambam is saying there was a miracle. There was an element of miracle, a miracle that's similar to nevuah, because you had people seeing things miraculously. What does it mean to see a fire miraculously? It means, again, someone who was walking past on that day on Mount Sinai, a guy, one of those guys maybe who, the Rambam Negeres Tema, by the way, says that we have a Messiah, that's someone who's not mamin in the Torah, b'yadua shelo omdu avosav al har Sinai. So I once had a question, so I let him marry his sister, whatever. But it could be like omdu avosav al har Sinai means he didn't see anything. Because now we learned that Maimed Har Sinai, the Amida, Maimed Har Sinai, Rambam uses that term a few times, he starts using that term, was a Maimed where people saw things miraculously. And maybe there was a guy there who's like, I don't see anything. Or there was a guy who's like, yeah, I see, because he didn't want to pretend that he doesn't. But
isn't there a third option that the nace was that it's sort of in between the two? It happened in the individual's reality.
What does that mean?
Meaning it happened. If the two extremes right now are, one is that it happened.
One extreme is like this: there was a voice that came from nowhere, and then anyone could hear it. Okay.
But it was an actual sound. That
right. You could pick. People got it on the tape recorders and everything. Right.
Right. But
yeah.
But
that's one way.
One way. The other way is that.
The other way is everything was the same as usual, but all of a sudden people were hearing things and seeing
but
things.
But it wasn't really a sound. It was just the ear generated the sound, or was there a sound that only some people heard?
Well, I mean,
was it a frequency, or was it just like an email?
Right. Right. So the question would be like this: what would it mean to see and hear something miraculously? I think what it would mean is something like. If let's say we would train, okay, let's take the miracle out of it for a second. Let's say we would train our minds enough that when we see something or when we focus on something, we conjure up certain sounds. Okay, whenever I look at the table, I think of a certain sound. And then, what if I train myself enough that happens automatically, that when I look at the table, I hear something? So what does it mean I hear something? I was hearing something. It means my brain processes an auditory experience. So it means to hear something. Ultimately, hearing happens in the brain, right? It happens because something hits the eardrum. But what if I make it happen without something hitting the eardrum? But it happens. I experience the sound. Okay, so that's I think that's what we're talking about. But the Ram happens to say it's al derech hanes. But it means that there was a nes that even though normally hanging around a mountain will not create an auditory perception of a kol shofar, or nor will it make kodesh ubrakim or eish hagadayla. Everyone was just looking at the mountain, and all of a sudden they had this experience of seeing an eish hagadayla. Seeing again, where's the experience happening? Between here and here, in the nerves of the brain. That's where sight happens. That's the only place where it's happening. Now, maybe to qualify a little bit, and maybe this is what you're getting at, it may have happened by virtue of the fact that they were looking at the mountain. So, I say it only happened in here. Well, when the guy turned away and didn't face the mountain, he didn't see the Aish anymore. So, is that called seeing the mountain? Well, if the mountain is causing you to have this perception in your brain, is that called seeing the mountain? Is that what you're getting at, that kind of thing?
Right. Where do you draw the line between is it happen or is it a vision? When you talk, how do you differentiate between those two?
Right. Yeah. So this is like a little bit in between, because if there's a certain circumstance that normally doesn't give people a certain experience, but gave a group of people all the same experience, then maybe their experience is not nearly in their heads, because it's the circumstances that engendered
it. Is the group directly relevant? Or the group
I think so, because if it's one person, we would say it's in his head.
But it's the same thing has actually happened, just happened to have happened times.
I know, but the point is, right, but the point is that therefore that tells us that maybe it's the situation that is goyim that kind of vision, and therefore in that sense they are seeing what's external to them. You're trying to define, are they seeing something external to them or not? It's a little semantics over here also, right? Are they seeing something external to them? In other words, if every time you look at a mountain you would see a fire in your brain, then that's what we call seeing a mountain, right? That's what it would mean to see a mountain.
Right.
Okay. What if it never happens that way, but one guy happened to look at the mountain and see a fire in his brain? Is that called seeing the mountain?
No, but there are characteristics of a fire, for example. There's characteristics of a mountain that, without seeing, a blind person can bump into a mountain.
Right.
Right, but if the fire part, either it's fire or it's not fire there.
No, that's not true. It's not true. Because a guy who's the guy who's paralyzed could bump into a mountain and not know that he's bumping into the mountain, and the reverse, a guy could think he's bumping into the mountain or not. See, every sense is the same. That it's happening internally, but there's external stimuli that make it happen. And the question over here is was there an external stimulus or not? So I think maybe the answer is something in between. The mountain stimulated them but the Ma'aseh was al derech nes because the laws of physics cannot explain why the mountain should stimulate this kind of response in their minds.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Rambam's conception of nes in general to be as teva as possible? It's more of a timing issue than anything else?
Not necessarily. He has in the Tchias HaMesim, he has two kinds of nisim. Some nisim that actually break nature, and some nisim that are purely about timing.
Was Har Sinai breaking nature?
That's an excellent question. And we really have to ask this expression al derech hanes. The Rambam has two words for nes in Arabic. This majaza, whatever it is, and some other word I forgot. And you have to really do your homework and see when he uses one, when he uses the other.
He doesn't write nes.
What does he have? Pella? Right. Pella. Okay, so we have to look into that.
Because if it's teva, then there actually was lightning.
No teva. No, not teva. Not teva. No, certainly not
It's
teva.
gotta be.
No, this certainly means more than teva.
This is more than that.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and it's not just that. Oh wow, cool thing because someone predicted it. It certainly means more than that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Also,
Because his whole point is, even though this thing happened, nonetheless they weren't neviim. That means even though there was something weird happening in their vision.
Well, the reserve to a nes doesn't automatically equate to nevuah.
I know, but since it was but the reason why the Rambam is saying that is because it was a nes that involving their ability to see things that most people couldn't see. So maybe they're neviim. No, they're not neviim. You see?
Does he reckon with by crazy answer for
He mentions it once in Shemana Prakim, Perek Hey, and Perek Dalet. Remember. And it's very problematic because, right? That's another thing that violates the rule over here. How could the Shif Chaliyam see? So it's very important. You know what the answer to that is, and it may have to do with Mount Sinai, but it's maybe getting ahead of ourselves. Here's my answer to that, which is supported by the Perek Dalet Shemana Prakim. Bavram brings from his father that the Rambam on the pasuk Ve'enas aticha lehim lepare va'aron achicha yineviecha. He says the following. He says, every navi prophesizes through the medium of a malach. So there's Hashem, there's a malach, there's a navi. Moshe Rabbeinu directly speaks to Hashem. So Moshe Rabbeinu is like the malach of every navi. And therefore Aaron, who hears from Moshe, is like a navi. Because if Moshe is the malach, every navi doesn't speak directly to Hashem. He speaks to Hashem through an intermediary. It's a malach. Moshe speaks directly to Hashem. So speaking to Moshe, who speaks to Hashem, or hearing from Moshe, who speaks to Hashem maybe, is like a nevuah. And b'derech zeh says a Bravam, everyone who's speaking to Moshe is I forgot his lashon, like a some aspect of nevuah. All of Yisrael were Nevi'im, because they spoke to Moshe, who spoke directly to Hashem. And a Navi is someone who speaks to that, which interacts with Hashem. So
Rambam says the entire time.
Yeah, well, no, well, they were like Nevi'im, talking to Moshe is like a nevuah. Now,
Rambam seems to focus it.
do you have to go into a trance? I don't know. Do you go into a trance? Do you have start? That's a very interesting question. In other words, every time a Navi has a nevuah, he goes into trance, and as Rambam says, it's chushim. Did that happen every time he spoke to Moshe? Did they have visions every time they spoke to Moshe? I don't know.
Well,
but that's, I think, Ruas Hashem Chalayam,
not
Mashallah
Moshe
Rasa.
had to cover his face.
Right, exactly, right. They couldn't take it, right. Very good. Right, that was a giloy. It was a revelation of come close to Hashem in a way they couldn't take. Right, that's very interesting.
But it also could be that they saw something at crazy Amazon, but it's not necessarily nevuah. They could just see it was a nace of some sort. They saw Yad Hashem.
Yeah, but it's saying greater than Yechezkel and Buzi. No, but it's saying more than Yechezkel.
Doesn't necessarily mean nevuah.
Yeah, I think it does. I don't know. Yeah, okay, that's very interesting.
So just
fine.
to clarify,
Yeah.
the derech nes, because earlier you said voice, and I want to make sure we're confining the derech nes to the fire and the sounds of shofar and kolos, not to the kol nevuah that we're going to.
Okay, very important. Right, very important. In this parak, the Rambam talks about the kolos sounds, plural. Neroim and avinim. That's the kolas shofar and the kolos ubrakim. And he also talks about a fire. In the next parak, he talks about the kol of Hashem that they heard, from which they heard or understood. Anochi and lo yelecha. Okay, that is not what the subject of this parak is, and that he leaves to the next parak.
So when he says that they saw what they saw, but they didn't reach the dark of nevuah, that means that a navi, let's say Aaron and Nadav and Avihu, who witnessed the same spectacle and beheld it,
right? Because they all saw that.
They, through the same sort of stimuli, to use your earlier word, they had a greater perception that was nevuah. That's presumably what the Rambam means.
Perhaps, I mean, or they happen to have nevuah also in addition to this.
Separate and
maybe
apart from
could
this.
Could be. But what Yaakov just raised also makes an interesting question. The Rambam here is coming to say that even though everyone had XYZ, they still weren't Nevi'im. Why does the Rambam not conclude in that, even though they all had experienced the Kol Hashem, which he's going to talk about in the next chapter? Why doesn't that, if anything, is what would make us think that they're Nevi'im? I mean, a bunch of things happened in Har Sinai, right? There were Kolis and Eish. If I asked you, why would you think everyone by Har Sinai was Nevi'im? It's not because they were Kolis and Eish, it's because they heard Hashem saying, Anochi and lo yelecha, right? And that's what Rambam talks about in the next chapter. It's interesting. Here in this chapter, he tells us something we didn't have thought of, which is that the Eish and the Koilas Ubrakim themselves were a miraculous kind of vision, and therefore maybe you'll think they're Nevi'im. No, Kamash, no, they weren't Nevi'im. But Lamais, if any reason you think they're Nevi'im, it will be because of Anochi Le'elecha, which he doesn't bring up here. It's a very interesting question.
They say, I don't know if it's the Rambam or it's sticking in my head, something about that means there that they were able to get it through. They're able to conceive of those ideas.
So that's the next parak. Right.
After they actually heard Hashem say.
Right. So that's what I was going to talk about in the next parak. But nonetheless, there was a koil that they heard. He says that they. Well, we'll have to see what he says in the next parak. That comes from there. But there certainly was.
The question is, why didn't he reference that koil?
Yeah.
Which seemingly was even a more.
Correct. Right. Now maybe the answer is because he's leaving that to the next parak. He'll explain to us what that is then. So that's fine. That's exactly what he's doing in the next parak. So he doesn't have to do that here. Now he's just talking about the experience of the Eish and the Koilis, which was also quasi nevuah because it was miraculous. It was Ma'aseh not nevuah. Maybe it's not Shema. I don't know if it's really cash. Okay, so this is why the Rambam is saying this tension over here, because there was a miraculous kind of thing, or when he says al derech nes, which is also an expression that has to be understood, al derech nes, a miraculous kind of vision, and my understanding of that is basically this kind of thing. If all of a sudden we now would start having some experience and all start hallucinating the same thing, and maybe start hallucinating the same thing, if we would all see, let's say, the Sefer of Moreh Nevuchim, all of a sudden mukaf with an Eish, so that would be very interesting, right? It would be a miracle, as in to say it wouldn't. There's no natural. We can't explain it naturally. It wouldn't be prophecy because. We have no. It's not something that we would understand as a message from Hashem, let's say, and it wouldn't be a mashal. We wouldn't have all those conditions of prophecy, and we wouldn't know its meaning. But it would be pretty cool and pretty interesting. Yeah, that's what happened there. But it's not a navi. It's not nevuah.
It's tied to the site, though.
Huh?
It's all tied
right.
to the site.
That's what I was saying before. Right.
They get mun. They're all getting an ace every
Right.
day, and no one's confusing that with nevuah.
Well, that's something actually. No, that's not a shemi or re'iyah derech nes. That's just a thing happening, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the re'iyah is probably tied to the mountain. Yeah, they saw it on the mountain. As I said, when someone turned around and looked away from Har Sinai, they didn't see it. So that's the question of, are they seeing something that's there? So not so easy question to answer. Is it there or not? If the mountain is making this kind of ocular experience, then is that called seeing the mountain? But I don't think we should worry too much about that. Right. So what?
No, I mean it wasn't irregular.
Okay, we'll see. Right, we'll soon see something about that. Exactly. Good. Right there. Gamza is bedarga shaynis. So only in order to get nevuah, you have to be roy for that, and b'meila, and even the roy, there's different levels of roy. Halatiras devarav el Moshe Amalei al Hashem atavar and the Ve'yu Shibzik Yisrael. Who all of Hashem darga gvoy b'yasing when Nigash Moshe levada Hashem leigoshu v'aron lamatim yimenu v'nod v'natim. So notice the Rambam is using the word v'nigash over here to mean approach, conceptual approach. Which you look in the Chelik Aleph. I forgot which parak we talks about the word nagash, and it means to be masig. Doesn't mean to approach spatially. It means that as well. Okay, but akapanim, so Moshe is approaching Hashem, Aaron below him in Madrega, v'nod v'avi l'matam Aaron in Madrega, v'shiv mish l'matam in nod v'avi, v'shar nashal l'matam hem, behetim l'shlem b'usayhem, l'shchem Moshe b'chitza v'fnei atzma and l'chitza v'fnei atzma, which again the Rambam is learning, interestingly, does not mean that Moshe was in one place in the mountain and Aaron was in another place in the mountain, even though that's how you'd read the Mechilta, and even though the Rambam in the parak of Nigash says it can mean that as well. Okay, we're not going to go into that now. Okay, so the question here is as follows. I want to show you that we have similar steers as we showed in the Yoel passage, similar problems we have in this Har Sinai passage. Look in Chilik Aleph Perek Mem Vav. This is about Royim Es HaKoilis, and this is in paragraph number 10. The Rambam says like this. The Rambam says that when it comes to sensory perception, we can really Re'iyah and Shmiya and all these terms mean to perceive. The method of the perception is not so important. The real meaning is perceive, and because it means to perceive, therefore in Hebrew we can have re'iyah for sound. Could mix it up. Re'u devar Hashem. Why? Because really what we mean to say is perceive. See, look, the smell of my son. Really means perceive. You can't see a sound. Teretz says see means perceive. Plus, as everyone knows, it's a Mar Nevuah. And what? So therefore, what if it was a Mar Nevuah? So therefore, that's another reason why I could say Royim Es HaKoilis, because Royim Es HaKoilis means they had a vision of a koil, I guess, something like the koil appeared to them in a vision. I guess is what the Rambam's suggesting.
Or whatever occurs to you as a result of the koil, perhaps.
Okay, whatever vision occurs in your visual apparatus in your brain as that induced by the koil. Okay. So here the Rambam says that it was a Mar Nevuah, and we just read the Rambam says it was not a Mar Nevuah.
Wait, that's a different. He says that's the Mar Nevuah, and in our chapter, it's not what he says. In Lamed Beis, he says right. So perhaps he's referring to two distinct moments at Mount Sinai.
Mm-hmm. Vayishmu es kol ha-shofar. We have to look at the psukim. There's different psukim.
Right. So
we have to look at the psukim.
He's talking about. I think the English word is. There's a word for this when senses cross over.
Yeah, synesthesia.
Synesthesia. Thank you. Here, Dafka, he's talking about synesthesia, but in Lamed Beis, it doesn't seem like
good.
It is.
Okay, but that doesn't answer the question because nonetheless,
it's not necessarily a stira.
No, but v'chol ha'am roim es hakoilis in Aleph Mem Vav, v'chol ha'am roim es hakoilis, he's saying is Mar Nevuah, and here he tells us that not everyone can have Mar Nevuah, and therefore any pasuk about v'chol ha'am cannot be a Mar Nevuah.
So it's a kasha, but not necessarily a contradiction.
Right. And something interesting you're pointing out that the Rambam here does not talk about seeing the koilis. Right, he uses shamu. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Another place is in Gimel Tes, in Chele Gimel Perek Tes, where the Rambam says that matter separates us from Hasaga of Hashem. So this is in Gimel Tes, paragraph number 3. He says Hashem's revelation in Av He'onon and choshech anan v'arafel. So now, so far we've been learning about the eish, about the koilis, and now there was also another thing in our Sinai, which was darkness, cloud, and fog. What's that about? The purpose of that was to learn this idea that what? That it's impossible to be Masig Hashem because of the barrier of being embodied. We're embodied. Because it's a mashal, it has to be a mashal, it's mar nevuah. So he starts with saying, look, it was a mar nevuah, so therefore it has to have a meaning. In other words, you can't read the psukim and say, okay, it was dark and cloudy. Kacha. You have to interpret it. You have to interpret it because anything that appears in a mar nevuah is a vision, is a mashal. So we have to interpret the mashal. What's the mashal of choshech? The mashal of choshech is you can't perceive Hashem. And then he says, even though that Ma'amad Gadol was greater than every mar nevuah, v'choyer mikol hekesh, and cannot be included in any kind of analogy, it's not without meaning. I don't know what he's doing over here. It's bringing your attention to the fact okay, fine.
What does it mean with that gadol mikol mar nevuah?
Yeah, greater than every mar nevuah. I don't know. So, on the one hand, the Rambam tells us they weren't all neviim in our parak. Then he calls it a mar nevuah in Aleph Mem Vav, and he calls it a mar nevuah in Gimel Tes. But then he says also it was greater than every mar nevuah. And as if that would for some reason undermine what he just said, right? He starts with saying it was a mar nevuah, therefore you have to interpret it, right? But even though it was greater than every mar nevuah, still the Ma'aseh has a meaning. What's going on with that?
But by us, he also says that not everyone got it. So fine.
Correct.
So for a lot of people, it was mar nevuah.
But what about v'cholam? What are you going to do with v'cholam? Well, no, v'cholam moim is a curse. That's the problem.
The Gimel Tes is not a problem.
Maybe not, because it doesn't say that everyone saw the choshech on the marafel. Okay, fair. So maybe like this. So Tavi is suggesting that cholam moim is a curse. We have to worry about that. Maybe Gimel Tes not steered to here because maybe lo higil daras and nevuah ella mishay ruim lekach, and not everyone saw the choshech on the marafel. Okay, I think that's not going to work out in the psukim though.
No, probably not.
I don't think so.
But it gets you out of Gimel Tes.
It might. I mean, seeing the choshech on the marafel was something that was only beheld by some. But why would he say that also? In other words, same way Shmiyas HaKodesh and the Roim and Eish HaGedolah. Yeah.
And he's not being specific.
Fine, but I'm saying, why would we say that the choshech on the marafel was mar nevuah? Why can't it be also this kind of al derech hanes that we have in Beis Lam Beis? Right? Why would you have to say this mar nevuah? Okay, Masha Ner Bazeh, the is like this. It's exactly what the Rambam did with Yoel is actually a very important introduction for Ma'amad Sinai. Because he brought these psukim in Yoel, which are about having visions, maybe miraculously, maybe naturally, not clear. And he says, I would call that nevuah. Either pasuk calls that nevuah. Okay, it's called nevuah. So the Rambam does the same thing in Ma'amad Sinai. Then he goes to Ma'amad Sinai. He says it's not really nevuah. It's a derech nes. Stam having visions al derech nes, not nevuah. Doesn't happen through nature. We cannot explain it naturally. Either Rambam calls it nevuah. Okay, so we call it nevuah. Exactly what he said by Yoel. Why is it called nevuah? One thing, why is it called nevuah? Because anytime you're seeing some hidden thing, like if I could look at a mountain and see fire, and I could say that mountain's on fire, I see the mountain's on fire, and I hear a kol shofar out of thin air. So that's called media nistaris. That means I'm tuned into hidden things that are hidden from other people. So that's called nevuah. Like Yakum Gir Navi. So the Rambam himself calls it nevuah.
So in Lamed Beis, are you suggesting that the use of nevuah when he says lo hisik dargas nevuah l'misha roi?
Yeah,
that's nevuah mamish.
That's nevuah proper,
That's
exactly. Right, exactly. But they were still going to call them neviim the same way that Navi Yoel calls these people who are not hagil mag dargas nevuah because they're children.
So you're
calls them
suggesting
neviim.
we're going to call them neviim in Gimel Tes
And in Aleph Mem Vav.
and
Yeah.
Aleph Mem Vav.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they weren't neviim with a capital N.
Correct. Now you might. So why are we calling them neviim? But you know what this kash is like? This kash is like the kashas we're asking on the Pesukim of Yoel. About else kasha. If they're not neviim, who cares about them? Ruchi means nevuah. This pasuk is about so we're not done yet. But you see, I'm lining it up that the same way the Rambam shtalavek Yoel and said, okay, it's just visions, right? It's not nevuah. But nonetheless, the Navi called it nevuah. The Rambam also then does a similar move by Ma'amad Sinai. He says it's not nevuah, but elsewhere he calls it nevuah.
Maybe nevuah proper is part of that is the process of achieving it through the natural way that the Rambam outlines.
Yes, it is exactly.
So, but you could get the information of nevuah. Both we talked about potentially watered down as the children got it, but also the opposite. You can get it instantaneously through a nace.
Well,
Definitely
the
not
only thing
nevuah.
that happened. No, the only thing that happened through a nace is that you can have a vision. Yeah, you can have you can have a vision through a nace. Why not? I mean,
The same vision that a navi would get from nevuah.
yeah, but it won't. But it's not nevuah because it's not going to tell you anything.
It doesn't even say
It's not going to tell you anything. You'll be left wondering what happened, and you could start interpreting it and giving pshatim in it. But it's not going to be. What I mean to say it's not telling you anything. I mean to say is that the vision that a navi has is the mind's, the imagination's way of interacting with truth. And therefore the Navi knows, not he interprets his vision. When I read Zechariah, I have to figure out what Zechariah meant. When Zechariah had the vision, he knows what he means. Why? Not because he interpreted what the Susim stand for, because the Susim are Seichel and filtered through the Koyach HaMadam. That's not happening over here. You could have a vision, yes. If I have a vision right now, all sorts of weird things happen, yeah, it would probably be appropriate for me to say, look, Hashem made an ace for me. Let's try to understand why he did it. But it's very weak. You know that's very weak because, like Rambam says, every nace is daifi. What does a nace prove? A nace proves nothing.
But
A nace proves absolutely nothing.
A nace can make it not weak. A nace can enhance
No.
the-
How? How can a nace can't do that? What's a nace going to do? A nace is not going to change my mind. What's a nace going to do? What do you mean? What's a nace going to do to my mind? A nace is just a nace. I saw something.
You can't do anything because beginning one base in 2. He says that's the Das HaManabar. That just one day the flips and the other one up.
Because you're not a navi here, right? Right, you're not a navi, but you can have visions. You can. Why
Yeah,
not?
visions, but you can't just, God can't just say, what?
Right.
you're not.
It's impossible. It's impossible, exactly. Because nevuah is something that relates to your mind. And very significantly, and this may be something to get to at some point, Hashem doesn't change people's minds. He doesn't intervene in their minds. Rambam says in Gimel on Beis, Hashem will never do a nace, not even a nace, to manipulate the human nature. Might violate this whole nace that's happening over here, but that's another shuz. But for sure to say that, okay, Hashem is going to make you know something, it'll be like making a rocket know something. Like I'm saying, make a frog know something. Like could Hashem make a frog know something? It's not a frog anymore. I don't know, whatever. It's not a frog. So human nature, he could change. He can make you not a human. You're dead, basically. Death is very important in this whole Ma'aseh Merkavah business. So say Taka died. We'll get to that in the next paragraph, next chapter. I mean, you're not a human being anymore, Shine. As a human being, there's ways it goes. Okay, let's move along. Yeah. Okay, so far so good. You see the parallel between Yoel and Ma'aseh Sinai. I want to show you how this happens in. This is a little technical, so I'll do this a little quickly. Shtikot Torah in Aleph Chof Aleph. I want to show you a very similar thing happening in Chelik Aleph Perek Chof Aleph. I'm going to see a few Ma'aseh over here and pull it all together. Aleph Chof Aleph is a long chapter. I'm going to paraphrase. It goes like this. He's talking about the word Avar, Ayin Beis Reish, and he says the following: Avar means to pass. One meaning, for a living thing to move. Okay, that's first meaning. Second meaning, sound to spread through the ear. Third meaning is important. It's used for the light and the Shechinah that Nevi'im see in the Mara Nevuah. Avram saw Tanur Osham Lapid Eish, and that was Mara Nevuah. How does he know it's Mara Nevuah? Because the pasuk says it's Tadim and Avram. Okay, so the third meaning of Avar is the light and the Shechinah that Nevi'im see b'Mara HaNevuah. The Rambam stresses that it says it by Avram, and there was a Mara Nevuah. Fourth meaning, to go beyond the bounds of something. Fifth meaning is to miss a purpose, or to change a purpose. Okay. Then the Rambam gets into what does Vayavar Hashem al panav vayikra mean. So he says, I would say it means Hashem moved. It would follow the fifth meaning, which is that Hashem moved Moshe from one kind of hasaga to another one. Instead of being Masik Hashem's face, he moved him to be Masik Hashem's back. Targum says, adds to the word Hashem, adds Shechinah, Yikara da Hashem. Did I get that right? Yikara da Hashem? Shechinte alapai. Hashem's Shechinah passed. Okay. The Rambam says, if you're adding a word, I would add the word koil. Vayavar koil Hashem alpanav. Okay, so these are the various pshatim. And now, in the end of the chapter, this is paragraph 14, the Rambam says, don't be bothered by the fact that there's many pshatim, because that's okay. And here are the choices. Here's how you read this story. This Maimon HaGadol may have been purely a Mara Nevuah, and everything was in the mind. Or it ach al davar nivra, or together with the Ma'ar nevuah, there was also a saga of something created through, and he saw it through vision, as Onkelos says, the Shechinah. But this Riyah also may have been b'Ma'ar nevuah, as we find by Avram. So the Rambam over here says that when the pasuk is Vayavar Hashem upon him, which means the Shechinah passed, that itself, that one pshat can be divided into two. Either means the Shechinah passed and that was not b'Ma'ar nevuah, or the Shechinah passed and that itself was b'Ma'ar nevuah. The problem is that the Rambam in the beginning of the chapter says that Vayavar means, Ovar means the Shechinah passing in a Ma'ar nevuah, and then he ends by saying that it could mean in or out of a Ma'ar nevuah. Okay? So I want to draw a parallel to what we're learning over here, which is that the Shechinah and this light, about which the Rambam says in the Chelik Aleph Perplexed, we'll look up soon, was Shechinah on Har Sinai, and it was Shechinah on the Mishkan b'derech nes. He uses the exact expression that he uses b'derech nes in Gimel and Beis Lamed Beis. We'll look at that soon. So the Shechinah is Shechin b'derech nes on certain places. That is both b'Ma'ar nevuah and both not b'Ma'ar nevuah. But even when it's not b'Ma'ar nevuah, it's called b'Ma'ar nevuah. It's exactly what we see over here. Why? Because in order to, I used to think that the Shechinah, which the Rambam holds is a light, I used to think it's a light, and once it comes, anyone can see it. Anyone who's walking past, you can see it. It's photons. But now that I'm learning Beis Lamed Beis, I want to suggest that no, the Shechinah is a light that you can see al derech nes. It's a nes that you can see it, and not everyone can see it. There's a miracle that sometimes people can see certain things. It gets back to your question of, are we seeing something that's there? Is it a combination between something that's there and something that's experiencing? I think it's probably something like that, some sort of combination. That like there's a miracle meaning it doesn't follow the laws of nature, but it has its own laws. Maybe you look at the Beis HaMikdash, you see a light. If you're a holy person, you look away, you don't see the light. So it's associated with a thing, with a stimulus, but it's ultimately miraculous. So therefore, the Rambam calls it Ma'ar nevuah, but then he tells us not Ma'ar nevuah, because that's what he's doing over here in the Gabe Har Sinai and the Gabe Yoel, that there are things that are called Ma'ar nevuah and are not. And again, I repeat, of course, ultimately to understand this, we have to get back to the core questions over here: is who cares about the fact that people are having visions? But that's all. This is getting back to that question: why do we care so much about miraculous visions if they have no content? Why are we even going to call them Ma'ar nevuah but lashon achlala? Is just to know what the way of asking. You call the navi abal a navi, okay, fine. But here Yoel is telling us something special, and this is the pasuk v'chazar as a nevuah, and the pasuk is ruchi. So this is all getting back to that question. Good, Yaakov, you okay?
So, yeah, the nature is the way you just explained it is not just when a non-navi sees it, but when anyone sees it, because it's supposed to be seen only with Ma'ar nevuah. Right, so if it's seen...
Well, I don't know, it's supposed to be. In a Ma'ar nevuah, it's not a miracle.
But meaning in a Ma'ar nevuah, it's not a nace, because
it's Ma'ar nevuah, right.
But then, so then let's split it here. So then when it's happening here, it's nace time, not by Ma'ar nevuah, is it a nace if anybody sees it, including a navi?
Well, it's a nace for me and you to see it. Maybe it's not a nace for the navi to see it. Gets back to what you were asking before about Moshe, Aaron, and the Shimon Zakanim may have all seen the same Kodesh Ubrakim and the shofar, but for them it wasn't a nace.
So is that not
that could be, right. Maybe not. For them it wasn't a nace. It could very well be that the combination between us, the Hamoinam, and Aaron, and Moshe, and the Shimon Zakanim was that they also saw the Kodesh Ubrakim and the shofar and the Eish. But for them it wasn't a nace, because it was a Ma'ar nevuah. For us it was. That brings the vision that we had, which was not a nevuah, but maybe might make us think that we're nevi'im, and brings us very close to a Ma'ar nevuah, because in a certain sense, we actually maybe in a certain, like you could say, we were participating in a Ma'ar nevuah miraculously, right? Miraculous, that's when I told you, that's the way I originally learned Aleph Chaf Aleph, that really the Shechinah is supposed to appear in a Ma'ar nevuah, and when the Shechinah appears outside of Ma'ar nevuah, it's like people are giving a flavor of what a Ma'ar nevuah is like, which is related to what we're saying now. You see? Like we were talking about before, like, Hashem could give me a vision, right? So yeah, I could, what's it called, cosplay, whatever the word is, I could LARP as Zechariah. Okay, yeah, very cool. You could do virtual reality Zechariah, right? You could walk and put on a headset, and you're going to see horses that are red and black, or like Ma'aseh Merkavah, right? Anyone do virtual reality yet for Ma'aseh Merkavah? Let's go. Let's go to the market, okay? You'll put on the thing, and wow, niftachu hashamayim, it'll be awesome. Then we get the chashmal and be like, okay, viewer discretion, whatever, right? You can't watch from here on. Okay, very cool. But what's so cool about it? You're not a navi. But let's say at the same time the navi is having this, you also are seeing what he's seeing, and then he's going to come back and explain to you what he saw, maybe explain to you the meaning, because he really knows what it means, right? This is an interesting way of reading Mount Sinai. They, Aaron, Moshe, and Shimon Zakanim, and everyone could be Taka. Either you were tuned into the Ma'ar nevuah, or if you weren't, Hashem made a miracle that all of a sudden you had this virtual reality nevuah.
Everyone saw the same thing.
That's a very good reading. I think it's a great reading. Yeah, I think it's very nice.
Some people understood what they were saying and some people didn't.
Some people understood, some people didn't. The people who didn't, what did they do? I don't know. We just saw they waited, but they waited for Moshe and Aaron to explain to them, right?
But if the
Right?
translation and the thing itself are
That's
one,
important.
like you mentioned earlier, then
For the navi, it is. What do you mean?
right? But
Yeah.
could that shell of the thing be the same? Is it possible that they're
No,
the
but it's
same
still very cool, right? If L'maisa, the fact is, if let's say there's one Yechezkel among us, right, and he has this vision of Merkavah, and at the same time he has it, everyone in Bavel also had the same vision, but had no idea what it meant. So then it's the L'maisa going to make Yechezkel's message very much more interesting, right? Because everyone's dying to know what they just saw, and he's like, I know just I just saw the same thing, but he says it over with the whole tam, with the whole Vayibur Shalom B'Shishon, with all the drushes. I'm saying with all the Torah, with all the words, the right words. And everyone else is like, now we understand what we just experienced.
The difference between Aaron and Nadav and Avihu is just how much they understood.
I think so. Right. Madregas Nevuah. Like always, Nevi'im have Madregas. Yeah, whatever the Madregas Nevuah are, I in the parak about Madregas Nevuah. Oh, so 1 second. So I'm going to show you about the Nes. So look at Aleph Samach Dalid. He talks about this Nivra again. He talks about the meaning of the word Kvoid Hashem. I'm in paragraph number 2 in Chelik Aleph Parak Samach Dalid. Kvoid Hashem, yesh sha'akavona b'hi ha'ar hanivra. Sometimes Kvoid Hashem means the created light. Shashem masher b'mokem mesuyim l'tzoich remimus. That Hashem puts in a certain place to mimraim it, b'derech shal nes. Okay, so here again we have this same expression, b'derech shal nes. And to your question, to Pesach's question, it's a mokem mesuyim. So it is a mokem mesuyim. The way I'm reading it, the derech shal nes is the derech shal nes that we can see it, and nonetheless it's associated with the mokem mesuyim, and it's miraimim the mokem mesuyim. And what's the two examples Rambam gives? Vayishkan Kvoid Hashem al Sinai and Kvoid Hashem Malei Mishkan. Okay, and why is it so important? Because you look at Chelik Beis, Perek Lamed Dalid, which we're not going to read tonight, but you could, if you want, if you didn't look at it yet, or maybe take a look at it later. The Rambam over there explains that the pasuk Hine Anechi Shaleach Maloch Lefonecha is telling us like this. Beis Lamed Dalid is saying that from now on you're going to have a navi. The Malach means a navi in that pasuk. And what does it mean you're going to have a navi? The Rambam ends the paragraph, ends well, sort of halfway through. I mean, towards the end of the parak, he says that Hashem is telling them that the Eish and the Onon that you had on Ma'aseh Sinai, the great Machzah that you had on Ma'aseh Sinai, will not remain forever. There will not always be an Eish and Onon like there was on the Mishkan Tamid. Rather, there's going to be a Malach. What the Rambam does, a very important move there, is that he makes the Mishkan, the fire and the Onon on the Mishkan is a continuation of this miraculous Machzah from Har Sinai. Something the Ramban does this, right? The Veshkik for Hashem Har Sinai now Hashem needs a Mishkan to stay amongst them. It's the same Shechinah on Har Sinai, which is now in the Mishkan. And the Rambam does this in Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Daled, and then that brings us back to Aleph Samach Daled, where he says that the Kvoid Hashem Malei Mishkan and Kvoid Hashem Har Sinai is the Ar, and it's a Derech Nes. And this Rambam, same Derech Nes, Rambam starts the Sugi of Har Sinai with, which is that they saw an Eish and heard the Koilis. And that's, I'm bringing this full circle to my Aleph Chaf Aleph, where the Rambam both calls it a Mar Nevuah, and it's not called, it's Yebbe Mar Nevuah, it's not Mar Nevuah. And now we have three things that are like that: the Shechinah, which is Be'etzim, the subject matter of Maimed Har Sinai, as we see in Aleph Lamed Daled, and the pasuk in Yoel. Okay, so now we have to go back.
Wait, do you read anything in Untitled Lamed Daled 3 where he says that it's a Ma'aseh Merkavah or a nevuah or?
Very interesting. We have to look into that. Right. Very good.
Cleansing.
Right, very good. Something to think about, and I didn't get to look into this enough, is the Parshas B'Shalach, where there's an Eish and an Anon. Okay, that's the first place where we have an Eish and an Anon, right? Not by Har Sinai. Right. Did everyone see it? Did the Mitzvim see it? Ein Sham in the pasuk by Yashkif Hashem al Machne Mitzrayim ba'Amorei Shvan and Rashi is one shot. Ram is different shot. Kids, there's something to think about. Was that this kind of miraculous vision? And again, but seeing meaning. Right, I think like yeah, again, I think in Ma'aseh Har Sinai, everyone saw it, the Kol saw it, but a random guy was walking past, didn't see anything. He just saw everyone going like this, like zapped out. He didn't know why. Right? Yeah.
Are you saying that the Vayashkin Kvoid Hashem from Samach Daled, Aleph Samach Daled, is that a separate phenomenon from
No, so I'm considering it the same thing now. I'm considering the same thing for now. Maybe we have to differentiate. We have a lot of things. We have the Choshech, we have the Kvoid Hashem, we have the Koilis, and we have the Koil, right?
But it doesn't
different things.
Isn't it Mavar the initial Claire
Yeah.
of whether it's created or
no, how?
What was the Nes?
No, I think over there also, I think the Nes was that they saw it. No, I would say the Nes was that they saw
You're
it.
saying Samach Daled, you still have the same Claire?
Yeah. Yeah, and I would read something down in light of this one that the nace was that they saw it.
It says that the shriya is
Right,
al-derech
exactly.
nes.
What's-
Doesn't
and what does
indicate
shriya mean?
That something is happening there?
No,
Al-derech nes?
I don't think so. First of all, we have to go to the Shri. I think it's chalais in Arabic. It doesn't have chalais. Ibn Timmon probably has
I'm not
chalais.
sure.
Ibn Timmon probably has chalais. Let's see.
Hold on, samach dal.
Almost all down. The Arabic word, there's an Arabic word chalais, very similar to chalais. Yeah, we could look at that. Let's do that.
Yeah,
Okay. There's like whatever, it's chalais in Arabic. See?
So chalais can go either way. Although
Right.
the fact that it's referencing where the chalais is occurring also
No,
seems to
no, but the chalais in the makim. Yeah, it's chalais. Yachala. The chalais in the makim is what we were handling before. That the makim becomes a place that all of a sudden everyone sees it. That's the chalais. The chalais in the what does it mean? There's a chalais. There's a chalais. It's chalais. The chalais shechinah in the makim is that this makim becomes a place that when the worthy people look at, they see a light. That, to me, that's chalais shechinah in the makim. That's what it is. Okay, let's go back to Yoel, okay? What are the questions? Who cares? What does the Ruach mean? And why does this mean Chazas on the Nevuah? The answer is like this. The answer is, the Pasuk is Eshbech Ruchi. You know what Eshbech Ruchi means? Ram tells what Eshbech Ruchi means. It means the Shefa, Sichli, Alaki, the Shefei, and the Nevi'im, Chelik Aleph, Perek Mem. So V'hayi Bayam Mehem Eshbech Ruchi Karbasar means Chazas on the Nevuah, of course. Pashat. It says Eshbech Ruchi. That's what Ruchi is. Ruchi means Shefa, Sichli, Alaki, Shefei, Ala Nevi'im. Pashat. Okay. Now, I the Pasuk says V'nibu B'reichem V'reisechem. And it says Al Kol Basar. It says Eshbech Ruchi Al Kol Basar V'nibu B'reichem V'reisechem. The answer is like this. The Pasuk is saying that there's going to be a return of nevuah. Okay, there's going to be one person, let's call him Mashiach, and he's going to have the Ruach Hashem, like it says in Yeshaya, Ruach Hashem, Ruach Hashem, whatever. He's going to be Ruach Hashem. Okay. How's he going to influence Kol Basar? How is the Ruach that's on Mashiach going to resonate with Kol Basar? Because everyone's walking around with visions. Mamish like we're talking about Ma'aseh Merkavah. Ma'aseh Merkavah, what happened was, there were some people that are Nevi'im. Moshe, Aaron, Shim, Zakin. And they knew what's going on. Hashem is telling us something very important. Anochi Hashem Aleikecha, whatever. Well, that's next parak. We'll see. And then everyone else was like, something crazy just happened. We just see, hey, what do we make of this? What was the purpose? What was the purpose of that? What was the purpose of everyone having these hallucinations, these miraculous hallucinations? The purpose was that made them susceptible, made them open to a message that's going to explain to them what's going on. So listen, if you been a navi, you would have been masking. Now I understand why I saw an Esha Gedolah and Kodesh. Okay, very good. So v'nibu b'nei V'reisechem is like this: people are going to walk around with chaloimus and chazyonis, and Mashiach is going to come and tell them, you know what's going. You know, everyone's having these dreams. Everyone's waiting for someone to explain the dreams to them. That's what you need ruach to explain the dreams. Like Yosef, you can explain the dream. So Yosef has the ruach halikim, and he can explain the dream to Pari. So eshbechas ruchi al kol basar. But how's the ruach? That's not ruach. Can't be kol basar. Ruach is only special people. But it's going to affect kol basar because the hoi poloi are going to have these chizyonis and chalaymis, which they're going to be looking for a pitaron, for a pesher, and that's what the navi is going to explain them. Not a pitaron, a pistron. Pitaron means a solution. Not in Hebrew. Pistron, pistron of the chalay. Okay. So now, basically, it's much like Moshe. Moshe provides the seichel. Like we're saying, Moshe provides the seichel, and they provide the dimin. Okay, so I think I answered all the questions. Yeah, you see how I answered all the questions? See how it all comes together? And the fact that the Rambam is doing something that's both an Amara, is a Mara Nevuah, is not a Mara Nevuah, and as we're saying now, it really is that what happens not by Mara Nevuah, the purpose of that, as a positive thing, is that you should find someone who's having a Mara Nevuah, maybe the same Mara Nevuah, even in ideal states, and then he'll explain to you what your miraculous chalayim and chizayin, what does it all mean, right? Bullshit. So that's the story that Yoel says. There's going to be a time where everyone's going to be having these dreams. Everyone will wake up one morning, everyone had the same dream, and then Navi's going to come and say Koyah Mar Hashem, and all of a sudden everyone's going to listen to him. Right? If they wouldn't all have the same dream, not going to listen to them. Why? Because, okay, some people will listen to Vashet and Rambam, and Chesed Torah, that you should listen to. Okay? And other people are going to be like, I don't listen to Nevi'im, whatever. And Navi's not such a big deal. Huh? Yeah, everyone's walking around. Everyone had a dream. Everyone's waiting for something and the Navi tells them, yeah, I actually had the same exact dream, but I know what it means. And here's what it means. Which is mamish like what happened by Mount Sinai. That everyone's having these hallucinations, and then there's a few people that are having the Shefa Sichli, that tells you what the hallucinations mean. And they're working together with the people. So Yoel is essentially, Yoel is a very, very important thing. It's like a new Ma'aseh Sinai. It's like there's two things that happen. One's Ma'aseh Sinai, where the whole nation had a vision, and there's also Shteit Yoel that it's going to happen again. And since it's not Stam, no, it's a very important thing. There's going to be a time where everyone is having visions. Mamish like Ma'aseh Sinai. Significantly, the Rambam in the next chapter says that Ma'aseh Sinai is something that, as we started reading about how special Ma'aseh Sinai was from the Years Taman, in the next parak at the end, he says, it never happened, it will never occur again, anything like it. Okay? How he knows it never happened, Pasuk says, how does he know it never happened again? I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the B'tel Torah and all that. We have to look into that. But the never happening again might mean that there will never be a koil of Hashem. But the idea of everyone having nevuah is mamish what Yoel is saying. That kind of very significant event where everyone has nevuah and therefore, or everyone has this quasi nevuah and therefore looks for a real nevuah to inform what's going on with them. That happened twice. Once in the past, and it will happen again in the future. Now I'll say one last thing about this, I will end. There's a difficult passage in Chelik Beis, Perek Lamed Vav, paragraph number 11. The Rambam over there is talking about how, since Nevuah utilizes the Koach Madameh, so therefore if a person's angry or sad, and the Koach Madameh is not functioning properly, he can't have good Nevuah. And he says, one example he brings for that is that Moshe Rabbeinu did not receive visions. This is on top of page 235. He didn't receive visions as he had earlier received from the time of the Miraculous until the Dar Midbar died. Why? Because he was weary from the Torah of the people because of their complaints. Okay. So Rambam says, he says, when you're angry or upset about something, Koach Madama doesn't function, and that's why Moshe didn't get nevuah in the same way. Even though his nevuah didn't use the Koach Madama. So if it didn't use the Koach Madama, so what's going on? So why would his being upset be Minei nevuah? So I would suggest, based on what we're discussing here, and this has to do with the Bavram point also, Moshe has pure seichel, okay? But the way he was interacting with the people and the way he was teaching them was b'tziruf with the fact that they were having dimyonis and chizyonis. They had a very important dimyon and chizyon in Ma'aseh Sinai. And they continued throughout the Mishkan. And Moshe Rabbeinu was utilizing their experience to make them open to his message. So I think that when Moshe came and said, okay, today I learned something new. Okay, what made the people open to hearing him is because in their imaginary vision, the Amud Anan started spluttering or whatever when Moshe came near it, as if there's something new to teach. Or whatever, something like that. So now Moshe didn't have to use the Koach Madama, but his subjects who were listening to him, some of them were only Koach Madama people. So therefore, when the Koach Madama was weaker because Moshe Rabbeinu was angry, so his. Why is his Koach Madama important? Because he had to know how to use the Koach Madama to give over his message. He didn't have to use the Koach Madama to know it himself, but he had to accurately map the Koach Madama that the people were having to make it rich, to make it interesting.
But you're also saying that this concept that we built up that was so special about Ma'aseh Sinai now stretches the entire time.
Well, that's you see in Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Dal, that it stretches throughout the Mishkan as well, yeah. And Hashem talking to Moshe Namanon, and everyone looking at it, yeah, this is, you think about it, okay, it's interesting, you say it's so special, but Lamaisa continued, right?
Ma'aseh Sinai never happened again. What do you mean?
Right.
It happened 40 years?
Right, it was 40 years, right, okay, it's a fair question.
And also the Rambam.
But by the way, that's the thing, in Chelik Beis Perek Lamed Dal, it makes it sound like it's only, Hinei Nechashech Malach is after the Mishkan, like, till then it's Taka face-to-face with Hashem in a certain way.
Doesn't the Rambam mostly, when you say it here, like maybe Ches or Zayin, or build the whole foundation of belief on the collective?
Yeah, so what?
Ma'aseh Sinai.
Yeah,
it
so
seems
what?
like there was something uniquely significant about Ma'aseh Sinai that was
Right.
Ma'aseh Sinai and never before and never after.
Right. So the question is that what's described in the next parak?